All right, let's get started. Well, just wanted to say hello to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to our Women and Pain webinar. My name is Mercedes Akinzi. I am with the Pain Awareness Information Network. You can call us PAIN for short. And I'll be your host for today. Again, thank you all for joining us, whether you're a patient, a healthcare provider, an advocacy organization, or just someone who has a personal interest in this topic. We are so glad that you're here. Today, we're going to be diving into an important issue that affects millions of women globally, but is often misunderstood and overlooked. We're going to we're going to explore how pain manifests in women, the challenges that they face in receiving appropriate care, and what can be done to improve the lives of women who are living with pain. But before we get started, I just have a couple housekeeping items. The first thing is that this session is going to be recorded. So if at any point in time your connection is unstable, no worries. This webinar will be available for viewing afterwards. The second thing is that we are going to do a Q&A portion at the end of all the presentations. So if you have any questions, you can either drop them in the chat or you can message me personally with your questions, and we will go over those at the end of the presentations. And the third thing is, this is the Pain Awareness Information Network. So we want this to be a networking opportunity for all. If you'd like to connect with others who are on this call today, please drop your name, your organization, and your email in the chat, or again, you can message me personally, and we will follow up with everyone who's on the webinar via email with their contact information and also additional materials that might be helpful as a result of the webinar. So now let's get started. So women's experiences with pain are often shaped by unique biological, psychological, and social factors, but historically, women's pain has been under-researched and under-treated. So our goal today is to bring awareness and explore strategies for better support to women managing their pain. We have an amazing lineup of speakers and experts. We have Chelsea Tibbetts from the Wisconsin Women's Health Foundation. We have Kathy Sapp from the American Chronic Pain Association, and Cynthia Toussaint, who is with For Grace, and they will all share their insights and personal experiences with us. So with that said, I would love to hand it over to Chelsea Tibbetts with the Wisconsin Women's Health Foundation.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much, Mercedes. It's wonderful to be here, and I'm very excited to talk about this today. So where I am in Wisconsin, it is still 11 o'clock, so I will say good morning to everyone. And my name is Chelsea Tibbetts. I am a certified health education specialist, and I serve as the manager of the Community Partnerships and Grapevine program at the Wisconsin Women's Health Foundation, also known as the WWHF. So we at WWHF, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and our mission is to innovate, impact, and improve women's health throughout our state of Wisconsin. We partner with state, private, and public organizations, and our goal is to provide Wisconsin women and their families with high-quality health education and services. So we operate 3 core programs, and they address various aspects of women's health. We cover chronic disease prevention and education, health information and referral services, and smoking cessation and substance use during pregnancy and postpartum. And we also collaborate on several projects which focus on cancer screening and improving cancer disparities in Wisconsin. So you'll notice that when talking a little bit about what we do, although we don't focus explicitly on pain, it is a crucial part of our work. The women, the children, and the families that we serve through our programming face numerous challenges, and they experience pain on multiple levels: emotional, mental, and physical. Many are disadvantaged in situations where pain often stems from various traumas. And in my opinion, that underscores the importance and the necessity of our efforts to address these complex challenges. As Mercedes mentioned, research shows that women often experience and report pain differently than men. For example, we know that studies indicate women are more likely to suffer from chronic pain conditions, things like fibromyalgia, migraines, irritable bowel syndrome. Women generally report higher pain intensity and greater pain-related disability compared to men. And women may also experience pain differently in response to certain medical conditions. For instance, when having a heart attack, women are more likely to have symptoms like shortness of breath, nausea, and fatigue rather than that classic chest pain that men typically report. So knowing how pain varies between genders is really essential for addressing these life-threatening conditions. One of our programs is called Grapevine, and in this program, women learn about how heart attacks do present differently in women compared to men. Recognizing these symptoms is crucial. Timely actions, things like calling 911, that can be life-saving. So I think this highlights the importance of continuing to include women in medical research, the need to acknowledge, study, and educate others on those distinct aspects of women's health. And hopefully by doing so, we can ensure that women are receiving tailored care, the attention that they deserve, and ultimately we can improve outcomes and transform lives. So we're very grateful to everyone that is involved in understanding and advancing women's pain and the impact that that has on health and well-being. Specifically, thank you to the Pain Network, as well as my fellow speakers here today, Cynthia and Kathy. I'm keeping mine relatively short because I do want to make sure that Kathy and Cynthia can have ample time to be able to share their perspectives and their experience and expertise. So I just want to say again, your dedication to this important topic is very much appreciated, and your efforts to spread that awareness is invaluable. So I think together we can continue to make a difference in the lives of women and ensure that they receive the care and the support that they need and they deserve. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the work that you do, Chelsea. Next, we'll hand it over to Kathy with the American Chronic Pain Association, and Kathy has a presentation. So I am going to screen share as soon as I figure out where that is. Just one moment. Oh, golly. And I apologize, I'm terrible with technology. Okay, so we are going to figure out how to do this. There we go, share. All right, can everyone see this presentation now? Thumbs up in the chat if you can.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Mercedes, and thanks to the Pain Awareness Network for this opportunity. And thank you, Chelsea, for all the work that you do. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I want to start by saying that I do not suffer with chronic pain myself. I started in advocacy because it was just based on some of the experiences that I had as an adolescent. I was actually diagnosed with migraines at a pretty young age. And because of the stigma that I received throughout kind of that journey of having migraines, it shaped the way that I manage my health care. And I think that a lot of women and probably just people in general can relate to that and how it shapes you. Unfortunately, I don't have them anymore, but I have had my share of experiences of the unfortunate treatment that women get when seeking health care. So next slide, please. So let's just talk about the prevalence. As Chelsea said earlier, there's higher rates among women. Women are more likely than men. Let me see my screen here. More likely than men to experience chronic pain conditions. Studies suggest that women report pain more frequently and often at higher intensity levels. Some of these chronic conditions, we know what these are. They're disproportionately affecting women, and those include fibromyalgia, endometriosis, migraine, chronic pelvic pain, rheumatoid arthritis, and I'm sure that there are others. Next slide, please. The gender bias in healthcare is a problem. It's underdiagnosed and misdiagnosed. Women often experience delay in receiving, the treatment, the diagnosis for pain-related conditions. Their pain is sometimes dismissed. It's attributed to, they think they have some kind of a psychological issue, such as anxiety or depression, rather than really looking at the root cause of what's causing the pain. So they just don't investigate it thorough enough. There's also bias in treatment. Studies suggest that women may receive less aggressive treatment for the pain compared to men. Example is they may not be prescribed as many opioid painkillers, or they're not referred to a pain specialist. And it's also more likely, again, to be attributed to some kind of an emotional or mental health issue. Next slide, please. This impacts the quality of life for women. It's, it leads to physical disabilities, mental health challenges, reduced productivity at work and at home. And as we know, it's an economic burden. Women in chronic pain may face financial difficulties due to medical expenses, lost wages, disability, and there are also a lot of times caregivers, which just adds to their physical and emotional burden. Next slide, please. Mental health effects on chronic pain in women. Of course, the depression and anxiety. Women with chronic pain are more likely to suffer from comorbid mental health conditions, including depression and anxiety. And then this kind of creates that cycle where they're untreated for their mental health issues, that exacerbates the pain, and then the chronic pain worsens the mental health. There's also social isolations. I hear from a lot of women that they're by themselves, and it's because they're afraid to speak up. And so the chronic nature of pain leads to isolation. A woman, they withdraw from social activities, work, and relationships due to the physical and emotional toll of
At my
their.
desk in a meeting.
Next slide, please.
I think we've got someone who's
It's
maybe
9
not on
o'clock
mute.
here.
1 second, let's see if we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here.
We have a visitor.
We do. Let's see if we can mute them. You know what? Let's see.
Did it go away?
Oh, it looks like it's mute. Okay, perfect.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Next slide, please. Thank you. Did you mute yourself? Next slide. Thanks. There we go. There's a socioeconomic and racial disparity. Women from lower income backgrounds or those belonging to racial minorities face additional barriers to adequate treatment. They may experience greater difficulty assessing healthcare, receiving the proper pain management, or navigating the healthcare systems is a huge issue. There's cultural stigmas. Certain cultural beliefs and stigmas surrounding pain and suffering may also influence how women report and manage their chronic pain. And this leads to underreporting or undertreatment. Next slide, please. And as we know, there's a huge problem with the research gap. Historically, women have been underrepresented in clinical trials related to pain, which has led to gaps in understanding how chronic pain affects women differently. This lack of gender-specific research impacts the development of treatments and pain management strategies. Next slide, please. In conclusion, chronic pain in women is a significant public health issue with both biological and sociocultural factors contributing to its prevalence and the challenges women face in receiving proper care. Addressing these disparities requires a combination of better education, more education, gender-sensitive healthcare practices, and research dedicated to understanding pain's unique impacts on women. So this is just a snapshot of some of the things that you can find on the American Chronic Pain website. So we have several resources for education. There's a comprehensive guide called the Stanford Resource Guide. We update that yearly. It was just updated in February of this year. We have a quarterly chronicle that goes out. We have a communication guide. I really encourage people to fill out this form and just jot down what's going on with your body so that when you go into that physician, you can have this quality dialogue with your physician. And if everything's not on that guide, just turn it over and use a blank page and just take notes because as you know, once we get in there, we kind of forget what we wanted to ask them. We have lots of videos, and then we have one that's called Migraine Pro, which is a great program. I think it's in its 7th year. We've updated that over the years. We list research on our website. So there's some research out there and clinical trials on the fibromyalgia, healthcare access, psychological treatments of chronic pain, and then we have many more than that. One of the things that we're pretty excited about, I don't know if you're all aware of this, but the First Lady Jill Biden announced a huge initiative late last year at the State of the Union address, and specifically for women, called Sprint for Women's Health. And so this is to change how our country treats women and researches health in women. And I think they put something like 12 billion against this initiative. So we put together a proposal with a couple of women and we submitted that, and we're still waiting to hear on that. So with that, I will hand it over to Cynthia.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you. Wow. Thank you, Mercedes, and thank you to the Pain Network and everybody involved with putting this really critical webinar together, a subject that is very near and dear. And a special thank you to Chelsea and again Kathy for your words, and I'm taking notes. For my part of this presentation, I really want to, as a very long time woman in pain, I want to I want to tell my personal story and weave it into all of our stories, because I think we have a collective story and we're much more powerful together than we are alone. And so often we women in pain feel so alone. Gosh, my story, I joined the Kingdom of the Sick way back in 1982. At that time, I was a singer, dancer, actor who had a perfect life. I lived to perform, and I'd just been cast on the popular TV series Fame. And then I set that one up, right? Then one day, a minor ballet hamstring injury triggered a very major chronic pain disease, complex regional pain syndrome, also known as CRPS. And it was in my right leg, and my dream life quickly turned into a living nightmare. I'd definitely say a living hell. I was left bedridden for a decade. I was unable to speak while the CRPS spread throughout my entire body and ravaged my vocal cords. Gosh, it took me 13 and a half years to get a diagnosis, and I'm not somebody who sits in the corner. And during that time, I want to mention that I'll never know if I had gotten appropriate, timely pain care, if my very high impact chronic pain that changed everything in my life negatively might have stayed acute. So that's something that I really want to emphasize. I will say that during all that time, I was always abused by my doctors. It started with the first doctor that I went to. There was always a lot of sexual harassment and abuse. There were always comments, invitations for dates, anger that I said no. There were gestures that were always inappropriate, hands where they shouldn't have been. We don't talk a lot about that, but I want to talk about that. I was abused. I remember the second doctor that I went to started a conversation by saying, "Cynthia, your hamstring is very tight, and that's the way I like my women." And it just went from there. I was abused in so many other ways. I was diagnosed with things like stage fright, tendonitis from Mars. I was often told that I was enjoying the secondary gain that I was receiving from my attentive partner, John. And I want to mention that John and I just celebrated our 44th anniversary. So I'm still getting a lot of attention from this wonderful guy. But back then, I literally would think to myself, but why wouldn't I look more attractive to him in my tutu as opposed to my wheelchair? You have to, as a woman in pain, literally throw logic out the window, at least in 2024 and way back then. I was a few years later, my right arm folded up into a very severe and permanent contracture. And a doctor said to me, "You're folding up your arm with your mind, just the way one levitates oneself." I did levitations actually in Las Vegas and Reno, and that's not how you did them. I don't know what that meant, but I knew that I was going to use that in my future work. That was like, ding, 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 this is very important. The worst thing that I was ever told by a doctor when I asked for suggestions as to how to lessen my pain was, he said to me, "You're only a woman anyway, it doesn't really matter. Why don't you just shoot yourself in the head?" A treatment plan that I did not follow through with, but as a result of all of this abuse, I dealt with very severe anxiety. I have something called derealization. It's a form of dissociation caused by childhood trauma. And it got to the point due to the abuse and also losing my life, that I could only lie in bed and stare at one wall because everything else looked and sounded so unreal that it was absolutely terrifying to me. That turned into very severe depression with time, hopelessness, and I came up with a plan of suicide. And I was certain that that's how my story would end. I'm going to have a sip of water here. Thank you. So I'm still here. That's a whole story. And in 2002, from my bed, I started the nonprofit For Grace, originally to raise awareness of complex regional pain syndrome, because the only other two women that I knew had the disease had just attempted suicide. One had succeeded, she was gone, and the other was in a mental hospital. And I felt that we deserved better. So at For Grace, we were raising awareness statewide, doing a lot of legislation, and then worldwide with really wonderful media that we were able to procure. And then one day, John, the attentive partner, dropped a pile of papers in my lap, and he was white like a ghost and said, "My God, this is what you've been saying all along." So that's when I got to read the report called "The Girl Who Cried Pain, a Bias Against Women in the Treatment of Pain." And I learned that we women are predisposed to all of the chronic pain diseases. We feel pain more intensely than men, and we have a lower pain threshold. However, when we women report our pain to our physicians, we are often told that it's hormonal, all in our heads. We were given sedatives and psychiatric referrals, whereas men in pain are much more likely to be believed and to be given appropriate pain care, including painkillers. So that's when we expanded For Grace's mission to helping all women in pain, and to borrow the title to a New York Times article that came out as a result of that report: "Women Hurt More and Are Helped Less." So I know that Kathy spoke about this to a point, and I just think that we can't hear it enough. And I want to break down those words, hurt more and are helped less. As far as women hurting more, there are so many reasons that we don't yet understand, but there is a lot that we do understand. For instance, we women are different biologically and physiologically than men. We have different brains and interpret pain differently. That doesn't mean that the pain isn't real. It just means that sometimes women, we are interpreting a signal from our central nervous system as pain, whereas men aren't interpreting it that way. Also, our hormones are completely different, and we know that that's a huge reason that women have more pain. As women, our skin is thinner than men's, and we also have far more nerve-rich areas in our bodies, which makes me have pain just thinking about it. It's been very well established that childhood trauma leads to chronic pain, and sadly, little girls suffer more childhood trauma, actually far more childhood trauma than little boys. Gosh, it starts when we're just little kids. Okay, so as far as the helped less part of hurt more and help less, there is a smorgasbord of implicit and explicit biases toward women in pain from our doctors. As the second-class citizens that we are, doctors look at us and think of us as overly dramatic, hysterical. That's the word hysterectomy. We have, according to them, we have mental health issues. We make mountains out of molehills, and certainly cannot be trusted with our self-reports of pain. Also, as was mentioned by Kathy, we women report our pain differently. We report our pain far earlier and more often than men. We also talk about our pain with our doctors in a way that we talk about our pain as how it affects our daily lives, our daily experiences, and our relationships. Sometimes we get emotional. Sometimes we cry. Ask any pain doctor's nurse if what's going to happen if you cry when you report your pain to your doctor, and they'll tell you you won't have a chance at being believed. Really sad. There is an ancient bias. There are a lot of them, but one is that women, and because we experience menstrual cycles, and because we bear the children, that women can take a lot more pain, and they really don't need as much pain care as men. In reality, before we women give birth, our brains secrete a lot of hormones and chemicals into our bodies to make our system more like that of a man's. Remember, testosterone is a really great painkiller. Also, we women have far more overlapping conditions than men. Last time I counted, I was at number 19. Just for whatever reason, we don't know yet, we women are really great at collecting a lot of comorbidities. Still in 2024, doctors consider men the breadwinners. I don't know what households they're looking at, but as such, men are more important in their eyes. Their pain needs to be taken seriously, and they need to be treated more aggressively. I want to go back to how we report pain differently, men and women. Men don't help themselves either when they report their pain, because they tend to be very stoic and only report their pain to a doctor when, you know, there's a crisis, like they're about to lose their job. And as a result, so often their acute pain won't remain that because they got to a doctor too late. So just thought of that. Another huge problem is that in medical schools, doctors or would-be doctors get only single-digit number of hours learning about chronic pain. Veterinarians get more hours of chronic pain treatment and learning than our doctors. And our doctors certainly don't learn that that if a patient presents with acute pain and they're not treated appropriately and in a timely manner, that their pain will very likely turn into chronic pain, which is really sad. I would be remiss if I did not talk about medical gaslighting with women in pain, because it is so prevalent. In fact, I feel like because of how abused we are, the things that are said and done to us as women in pain, our psyches are so profoundly stained that many of us, I've seen it, many of us never fully recover. I've seen people commit suicide as a result of that abuse. As a result of the gaslighting, women experience more mental health issues. As Kathy mentioned, we report a lot more anxiety and depression as a result of that gaslighting. Also, we actually, because we're told so often that we're making up our pain, that, you know, it's all in our heads, we actually start, this is so sad, we start questioning our own experiences. I took it further than that. I actually tried to make myself crazy because I finally decided that the only chance I had at getting a diagnosis, but that was over. But getting treatment was if I could be crazy. But it doesn't work when you're at a level 10 every moment of every day. I have a colleague whose sister was a woman in pain, and she did what I did. She tried to be crazy to get help, and they put her into a mental institution, but when you're at a level 10 pain, you can't do that. So she was released. They finally opened up her body, and she was so filled with cancer that she died shortly thereafter. These are the costs of the biases toward women in pain. There are no words for it. As a result also of the medical gaslighting, we ultimately, we feel great. I remember this very well. We feel great shame and guilt for being constant, you know, over complainers, because we're always accused of that. And we actually display a form of learned helplessness. And by that, I mean that we stop going to doctors altogether because we learn that we are helpless to change these terrible and destructive outcomes. Another thing, I would have said probably 3 months ago that a part of the help less, part of hurt more, help less, would be the fact that pain is invisible. You can't look at it under a microscope and, oh, there it is. You know, you can't measure it. It's a subjective experience. I am actually doubting now that that the fact that our pain is invisible has anything to do with us being helpless. And I'm doubting that for 2 reasons. Number one, reports continue to show that even when a woman in pain does tests that prove that we are dealing with the pain that we are reporting, we're still generally not believed by our doctors. The number 2 reason is something that I am going through right now. I have a very very severe case of shingles. In fact, every doctor, except the one I'm about to tell you about, has said it's the most severe case that they've ever seen. It was caused actually, but it's a complication of I've gone through cancer treatment twice since 2020. So this started about 6 weeks ago, and I went to immediate care. I got a male doctor, which is always a disappointment. But this was not, did not go in with an invisible disease. I did report my pain as a level 10, 0 meaning no pain, and 10 meaning the worst pain you can imagine. And also I had a very high fever. And the icing on top was that this doctor could see my blood red, really gruesome rash of blisters that went down my entire the right thigh, the front, the side, and the back, and also went up the back of my body. He saw all of that. He heard me. I was very desperate. And guess what he did? You're probably guessing. He dismissed me. I basically begged him to diagnose me with obvious shingles and to treat me with it. Instead, he said, no, you're probably using a heating pad and doing this to yourself. And he suggested that I take a picture of it. I went home, and it took me, I couldn't get in to see another immediate care doctor for 24 more hours. If you know shingles at all, you know that you have to be treated very early with it. I requested a female doctor, and I requested a female doctor of color because, as many of us know, if you're a woman of color, you're abused even more by doctors, and you're dismissed more than we Caucasian women in pain. When I saw that doctor, she was livid. I thought she was going to spit when she looked at the report from the day before, and she made it very clear that I had to get home and get on the antiviral immediately. I, of course, was diagnosed with shingles by her, and she also made it very clear that I had lost time in my treatment, and she said that I might, as a result, end up with it's called post-herpetic neuralgia. It's yet another acronym that I need to learn for my pain, PHN. I'm still learning it, which is chronic pain, and that's what I have now. And we think it's probably because I lost that 24 hours, that critical 24 hours. So that would be on my overlapping conditions number 20. How tragic is that? I've been doing this work for 23 years and I was still dismissed. We just don't have a way to get those doctors to believe us because we're female and we have pain. We have to change it. I also want to make the point that studies continue to support the fact that when women and men go to the ERs, men are given far more painkillers than women. This is more meaningful to me now as I'm on painkillers for the first time in my life. Also, when women and men have the same surgeries at the same hospitals before they even wake up and report their pain, men are given, before they wake up, men are given far more painkillers than women. Shameful. I would like to say that since The Girl Who Cried Pain was published over 20 years ago, that we've really kicked the can down the block, around the block. That is not the case. A 20-year follow-up article that I got to consult on called The Woman Who Cried Pain said really the opposite, that very little has been done as far as women in pain and helping this minority of people. Not sure how much of a minority that we are, though. We are making some baby steps, and I want to mention them, but we got to really up our game here. But we are finally studying and deciding that bias is a thing, and that includes gender bias, of course. And also we've decided that equality is a thing. I'm thinking this is probably as a result of the Me Too movement. I don't know. Also, this is exciting. More women are going to medical schools, and we think that's going to really help women down the line. And actually last year, 55% of medical school graduates were women. So that's really exciting. Also, we're finally, researchers and scientists are studying female conditions like endometriosis, like menopause, as well as conditions that happen mostly to women like migraines, which is twice as many women, and also autoimmune diseases, which is 80% women. So that's really exciting. And I have to mention that in research now, we are finally using female rats. And I think that may be the biggest step that we've taken. So it's slow, and we need to move forward, and we need to make change. So thank you for listening to me, and I look forward to the Q&A section of this webinar.
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. Honestly, what you're experiencing is like you said, it's not uncommon, and it really highlights the critical need for us to address the disparities that exist in this space. And it looks like we've actually got some really good questions, and we can dive right into those about what you guys have just presented. Okay, so it looks like someone says, please comment on the special burden women in pain have as caregivers, wives, mothers, etc. Women aren't allowed to stop and heal, right?
Good
And
point. So I'm so
recording,
ill.
Kathy.
I'm not able to get out without a caregiver. So I actually, rather than being a caregiver, I have a caregiver. So I can't really comment too much on that.
I could probably speak on that. I think at the Wisconsin Women's Health Foundation, we see this a lot in, especially our health information, our referral services. We often have women contacting us, and they're asking for support for their family members, other people they're caring for, their children, their loved ones, their parents, their friends, whatever it might be. And they're truly completely disregarding their own needs, whether that's a physical need, a mental health need, an emotional need, whatever it might be. And I think that is something, that Cynthia's talked about, is there's this expectation from society, and also a lot of guilt that comes along with women actually putting their own needs first, and that delays their healing. And I think one of the things we can do is continue to have family and friends and healthcare providers offer support, encourage those open conversations, and then also a lot of education. So one thing that we try to do at Wisconsin Women's Health Foundation is educate about the importance of self-care. And I know sometimes that can sound like a buzzword, but we like to just explain self-care is not a selfish thing. It's actually crucial, because if you as a woman aren't filling your own cup, there's no way you can help and support the people that need your love and your care and all of those things. So I would say thank you to Randall for bringing that up, and knowing that if we can help women advocate for themselves and recognize the importance of recognizing their own self-care and their own needs, we're going to get a lot further.
Good point. Good point.
I also had a couple people who couldn't attend the webinar, but had questions for you. So one person said, how can women advocate for themselves more effectively when their pain is being dismissed or undertreated by medical professionals? I feel like Cynthia kind of touched on this, and Kathy did as well, but maybe, is there anything you would like to add?
I guess I would say, if you choose to partner with a doctor, you might not, but if you choose to, I would say, and I think Kathy touched on this, maybe bring a tape record the conversation, or bring somebody with you. Write down your questions. Don't accept abuse. I mean, if a doctor questions you or abuses you, fire that doctor, and really. And look for somebody who's going to help you. There are a lot of good doctors out there. And I just also want to mention that doctors, a lot of with implicit biases, doctors don't want to abuse women. They're not even aware that they have these biases. And when they're told that they do have them, they generally want to change it. So that's a good news,
Yeah, and I would just say that the more you educate yourself, I think that the physicians respect that. So, don't go in and say, oh, I saw this new treatment, on a commercial or something like that. But go in there and say, I read this in, on one of the, the American Chronic Pain Association's website, or a journal that's respected. But if you go in there educated, your dialogue really changes. And like Cynthia said, don't put up with somebody dismissing you. And I think the other thing that most physicians do, they'll say to you before you leave that room, is there anything else I can help you with? And a lot of times we just say, no, we're good. Don't do that. Just really speak up, and then also don't accept poor care. I think so many people are intimidated by physicians, but go in there well educated.
And I have to say, as far as I agree that you should be well educated and learn about your diagnosis. If you don't have one, you can usually at this point with the internet, which was very different from when I was sick, you can pretty much find out what's wrong with you or have a good idea. But when I go in and educated, doctors really truly dislike me for that. So again, it's just, it's like this, what do? You
There are some.
there are
yes.
some, but again, it's this walking away from the abuse of doctors and know that you should be educated. And if a doctor is threatened by that, that's not the right doctor for you to partner with.
I agree.
Yeah.
I don't
They're
have
just-
a ton to mention on this one, but I did want to just say that I think if we can look at pain holistically too, and recognize that, especially as women, typically we have like our primary care provider, we have our obstetrician and gynecologist, we might have a couple of other specialists. And so to mention your pain at each of those appointments and with each of those professionals, and see if you can have them work together to kind of try to identify, this is how I'm working with this individual and this area of their life or this area of health, and make sure that everybody's recognizing your pain at a holistic level, if that makes sense.
That's a really good point, Chelsea. When I went through cancer treatment, when I had a recurrence in 2022, all the doctors were just sort of compartmentalizing me. And I finally just said, you know what, we all need to get together. And I got the 4 doctors that I really trusted, and we did a shared decision-making board. And and all the power was put into my hands. I listened to everybody's expert advice, and I actually would have died if I'd gone with my oncologist's advice. But that shared decision-making is so important with all of our medical problems. And I really appreciate that, because that saved my life. And now that's being written about a lot in books now, and how we have to change things. Really good advice.
I'm really
Looks like-
excited to hear that you had that experience, Cynthia. Shared decision.
It was really positive. Yeah. Obviously.
Life-changing.
Yeah.
Looks like we've got a couple more questions in the chat. Says, can you talk about the trauma, can you talk about past trauma as cause of chronic pain? Because they haven't found a physical explanation. So it sounds like someone's speaking from their personal experience. They haven't found a physical explanation. They said, I must have been traumatized sometime in the past. I'm spending lots of money trying to figure out what happened.
Yeah, so this is really well established. I mean, pain psychologists won't even talk about it anymore. They're just done. That's actually, it's not true that trauma, I can't remember exactly what was said, but that trauma doesn't change your body, or I can't remember exactly what was said. But yeah, with childhood trauma, I went through a boatload of it. What happens is it changes the way our brains don't develop correctly. And as a result of that, it puts our nervous system into constant fight or flight. So unhealthy. And then that leads to all kinds of toxic stress hormones that race through our body. And that leads to body-wide inflammation, which leads to pain. It's really well established. Pick up any trauma book, and it will tell you exactly how this happens. And I believe most every disease is caused by trauma. I've been studying it for about 3 years now. Ever since when I had the most aggressive form of breast cancer, and I said to my pain doctor, how do I have this too? And he said, he knew me very well. And he said, you've been trying to fix your dysfunctional family your entire life. And the toll that took on your body is why you're so sick. And that's why you've always been so sick.
These are all such great questions.
Yeah, they
they're
are.
great.
I was going to mention too, for that one, if you haven't looked into ACEs or adverse childhood experiences, that can be a great place to start. There's a lot of research around it right now. And you could actually take an ACEs, I guess it's kind of like in a quiz, an assessment to see what your ACEs score is, and that can correlate then to not only pain, but also just other health concerns or health factors that the people are, there's a very clear connection, as Cynthia said. So ACEs
Yeah.
can be a great place to start too.
I appreciate that, Chelsea. And I actually score an 8 out of 10, which is so sky high. But that can be scary to take that. People are sort of not sure, you know, there's a little bit of a controversy over the AC, the test, or that questionnaire now, but there's also a positive childhood experience questionnaire that you can take to kind of balance that out. So because the bad things that happened to you as a child and in utero, and also with our ancestors, that affects us so negatively. But the PCEs, the positive childhood experiences, also affect us. There's always hope, and also know that with trauma, you can reverse a lot of the damage. I've done a lot of that, and I'm much more healthy. I just don't want people to feel like there's no hope because they had a lot of childhood trauma. There's always hope.
Yeah, absolutely.
Education.
Those protective factors too.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Thanks. Looks like we've got another question here. It says, do you think the day will come where chronic pain and medical diagnosis are bundled together with talk therapy or other forms of therapy that help with the emotional and mental trauma that almost always accompanies chronic pain? I've suggested this to medical students that I work with, that they make that an aspect as part of their standard practices.
I sure hope so. That sure needs to happen. I think it will happen eventually. But like
Anyone
everything,
else?
it takes time.
No, it's good to hear that they're teaching that, because that's one of the problems. They don't teach compassion in medical school, and you can teach compassion. So it's good to hear that you're doing that and teaching that. So that means there's progress. But, you know, doctors are human. And like Cynthia said, what they're getting in medical school, they're not getting everything on treating pain, unfortunately.
And to be fair to doctors, you know, they're taught in medical school to cure. And with high impact pain, I mean, I don't think we're looking at a cure, we're looking at healing, you know, and that's really hard for doctors. That's not what they're.
Yeah, and preventing, we need to prevent, we need to find more ways to prevent it.
Good point.
So I think that there's, you know, there's some great medications on the horizon, you know, for acute pain, which I'm hoping will delay some of the chronic pain, especially for women. So there's a lot of changes happening.
Fantastic. I think I have one last question. It says, how can we encourage more studies focused on female pain experiences? Any thoughts?
All I can think of is talk to your doctor, you know, tell them what's happening and encourage it. I mean, any other thoughts, ladies? That's a good question.
Well, I think they're out there. I think what it's going to take is a lot of partnerships. I think people need to partner more, you know, like our organizations, all of us here, the speakers, you know, we need to partner with some institutions and encourage it. I think that there's a lot that are disease specific, but I think that we need to get to the heart of, you know, what is it about our genetic makeup that we process pain differently? Because if you go and you look at all the clinical trials, it's all disease specific, but let's talk about it. It's like you said, they have female rats, you know, let's look at our DNA and what's causing us to be so sensitive to pain. But I think there's a lot out there. It's just a matter of, we just need to speak up and partner with each other to make it happen.
And I think it starts with awareness about the problem. You know, women hurt more and are helped less. And I think that will, if we get more awareness out there, that will lead to more research.
Mhm.
Yeah, and Kathy, you mentioning clinical trials. I think that's a great place to start. You know, we can all look for clinical trials that are happening in our area or just, you know, throughout the nation and see if there's a way for us to support it, advocate for it, spread the education about it. Even if you yourself aren't a good candidate, maybe you know somebody who is. So all those clinical trials, you gotta start somewhere.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, I think that pretty much concludes all the questions that we have. Just want to thank you, Chelsea, Kathy, and Cynthia, for your insights on the effects of pain in women, and great questions, everyone. We will follow up with our findings and additional opportunities for engagement along with a recording of the webinar in an email shortly. So please feel free and share this all with your network. And we hope to do some in-person meetings in the future, continue these conversations. And then just a reminder to please, again, look out for that email following up, and then also upcoming webinars. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mercedes. Thank you, Chelsea,
Yes, thank
Kathy,
you,
and everybody
everyone.
here.
Bye.
Bye-bye.